Hello and welcome to Kickin' It with Mabel, an entertainment program where I'll be delving into a variety of topics joined by a group of guests from all walks of life. What will we be discussing? An array of topics ranging from centering ourselves, what the arts mean to us, caregiving, the global pandemic, and countless other topics. Today, our hot topic are relationships. What makes them successful or not? And today, accompanying me are four individuals, three of which I know rather well. Let me begin by introducing them. I have Enio Cordova. Enio is in Florida. He is originally from Chicago, if I'm not mistaken, and raised in California, a professional dance competitor who was also a dance studio owner and educator. We are also joined by, I'm going to start with the gentleman, Tim Leslie, just to make it easier for our viewers. Tim Leslie is a professional licensed marriage and relationship therapist, as well as a dance instructor. We have also with us Eileen Green, who is based in New Jersey, and she and her husband own a boutique marketing company. You work with small and middle-range businesses, providing social media insight. And we have Julianne Cantarella, who is also in New Jersey, and you are referred to as you're a matchmaker.
Yeah.
That's what I'm referring to you as. Matchmaker, expert on relationships. I know you're going to share with us a lot more about what it is that you do, but I couldn't think of a better panel to discuss relationships. So I'll begin the discussion. I thought it would be great to talk about something that everyone can relate to. And I can't imagine that there isn't a viewer that can't do so. Whether you're 5 years old, 10 years old, 15, 20, 30, 90, we're all dealing with a variety of relationships. Not only romantic relationships, but relationships with our friends, with family, with acquaintances, with strangers. And I thought, what better topic than to discuss something that we can all relate to and provide ourselves as well as viewers an opportunity to ponder about what it means to us and also provide our personal experiences on relationships. And since I know most of you rather well, I thought, oh, this is a nice group. So I'll begin by sharing some of my thoughts. I'm going to start with romantic because initially that was where I was going with a particular topic. And then when I thought about it some more, I thought, no, this really is, if I want it to be inclusive, it's about discussing a variety of relationships. And so it's not only romantic, but I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, I'm a colleague. And so I have all of those relationships. And for me, I thought it's about listening. First and foremost, I thought listening is very important. I don't know personally how well I'm at that. And I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at doing that. But listening, we may be present with someone, but not necessarily, we may be physically present with someone, but not mentally present with them. My other thought was, why is it that sometimes we have disagreements with individuals? And something that I've learned over time is that we often get triggered. And very often, disagreements, miscommunication that we may have has nothing to do with the individual that we're with or the discussion that's taking place. We often will get triggered by things from our past, and unfortunately, whoever happens to be with us at that moment suffers the consequences of our past. And so those were like two, I don't want to say aha moments, but when I thought about it, it's like, those are really key things and things that I continue to work on as an individual. But I'd love to get your take, just with your backgrounds, your personal experiences. I'll begin with Julianne. And I know you were referred to by Eileen to me, and I'm going to actually go to my notes. New Jersey's original matchmaker, dating coach, and relationship expert. I feel like I'm doing an episode on the Maury Povich show or something. Well, she's a great marketing individual, because to refer to you as that, It says it all. I'll be talking to you after the call.
Sure.
Hey, Julianne, what are your thoughts about relationships in general? What do you think makes them successful or not?
Okay. I think for most people, it's kind of simple. It's really good communication. We really want to be in our relationships, we want to be heard and we want to be seen. We want to be validated. So when you're in a relationship with someone, whether you're growing a relationship or you've been in a long-term relationship, that communication has to be key to making it a healthy relationship and have it grow. So that's the one thing that I think is really important. And I suspect everybody agrees with me that good communication is really key to a healthy relationship, whether it be your friends or your parents or your spouse or a long-term partner.
Tim, I see you nodding. I guess you are in agreement. And you're a licensed marriage therapist and well, I would say relationship expert as well.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? How would you agree? What's your take on it?
Yeah, I do think communication is a big piece of it. And something I talk about with the people that I work with is kind of this ability to really be fully present with one another and to really be honest about kind of what the experience is. Oftentimes when I work with people, whether they're dealing with marital issues or having issues with their family of origin, they kind of talk about these conflicts that come up or these misunderstandings. And underneath all that is kind of like Julianne mentioned, is this desire to really be heard and to be understood. But also because people are kind of tiptoeing around certain things and trying to do what they think the other person wants. And then when we start operating out of these assumptions, it creates a bunch of gunk and stuff that we have to work through. And I try and kind of get people to get past that. It's like, yeah, part of being in a relationship means that maybe people are going to disagree with you. Your individual needs might not be met, but that's how you build intimacy, is being able to overcome those things. So it's important to be able to kind of get over that hurdle, but it's difficult. It's easier said than done in a lot of cases.
It's great. I'm getting feedback from all of you in a silent way because I can see the nods or I can see the Eileen, I saw you nodding there a little bit as well, a little smile. Thoughts?
Well, a few things. So Ted, my husband Ted, always says people have two ears and one mouth for a reason, which goes back to the listening component. I was obviously, as you mentioned, I was married before for a very long time. I had two children who are now grown. I married young. And I think I married before I had a fully formed personality. And I think people are better at it now. They don't marry as young as we did when I was a young woman. And I didn't really know the man I married the way I thought I did. And so our marriage was rocky for many years. When I bumped into Ted and we reconnected, I had this immediate feeling of comfort, is the only way I can describe it. Like an old friend had suddenly walked into the room. And from the very beginning, I always felt, besides the fact that we love each other, because obviously you need to love each other, I remember my father once saying, you need to be best friends with the person you're with. And he said to me, your mom and I have fights and, we disagree. We love each other, but we were always there for each other as best friends. So we get through everything. And that's how I am with Ted. I didn't, unfortunately, have that in my first relationship, and I missed it. So I'm happy to be able to say I do have it now.
And are you best friends with your wife, Terrell Jones?
Yeah, at least once a week. Yeah, I think so. I'm the odd bird here. First of all, because I was married to something else. They say people are married to their jobs. I actually realized this after my first marriage, that I was married to dance. And most of the relationships went, I was a long-term relationship. First girlfriend, 7 years. I was in long relationships, but the thing was, I was married to dance. And that my first wife, when we got into it, I thought, I can turn her into a star. And I did. And it worked. Except halfway through, she realized how much work it was. It wasn't her, she was not, she didn't have the same work ethic that I did in terms of dancing. It was, too much work, too much pain, whatever, and started to drag down my career. So I started to resent it. And she derailed a meteoric rise. And we got back together and broke up and and finally we said, no, we're going to have a family, have kids. And we made a deal that we would have kids if I would continue to dance. And if she didn't want to, I would have the ability to go and find another partner. That didn't work out so well. And so it did. So we ended up splitting. So for somebody who looks at relationships, I look at them totally different now. And I know this is a little pop psychology, but I think two things have really shown me how to be a great friend. And that's the book, The 5 Love Languages. Because when I did that, I immediately recognized myself, Terrell, my other relationships. And it suddenly realized that the things that made her feel validated and heard were the fact that I was doing things that she needed to feel loved. So it's like, when they say you give somebody gifts and they could care less, and you're going, oh my God, I've given you all these gifts, but you don't appreciate them. All you had to do was, if they were words, all you had to do was say, oh, wow, you are so special. And it just rocks their world. So that, as pop psychology as it is, boy, was that a huge change in our relationship, because if you love somebody, you have no problem doing what it is that they need. So I turned around my relationship with her with that. I said, what does she need? What makes her happy? So if I wasn't doing the thing that she wanted, then why be in the relationship? So everything I do is a choice. I choose to do it. I do it because I know it makes her happy.
But I think that's the whole point about at least love relationships, that you have a feeling about somebody rather than resent them. You want to be with them, but it's a mutual thing. And Julianne and I have talked about this. That feeling has to be there on both sides in order for it to work. So, I think sometimes two people get together, they think they'll work, and then they just don't, for whatever reason. You can call it chemistry or different value systems that you come from or whatever, but you have to be able to be with somebody through the good and the bad. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. And that's the part of it that really makes it special, when you can, as Ennio said, you can see each other and know what each other wants and needs and be there for them. But again, mutually, so it works on both sides.
And you said comfort, and I thought that was so beautiful, Eileen, because that's how I select my friends too. Do I feel like I'm in a safe zone? And I use that term. I want to say it was a class or someone I read. And when you mentioned the book that you did, Ennio, I read it as well. A friend gave it to me. I thought I had it on my bookshelf next to me. The only one I could find. I remember reading this early on, and I thought you guys might get a kick out of it. But this was one of the first books I read. Some insight. But I did read the other book. But how do you, especially in a romantic relationship, because I feel the stakes are higher. With friendships, I don't know that we go into it thinking, oh, I want to be their friend, or at least I don't. That's something that I've learned in the last few years, unconditional. So how do you do that early on in a relationship before you even get to the marriage part?
Yeah, I think with earlier on in a relationship, what's a common experience for a lot of people is that all this passion and kind of excitement kind of kicks up in the early stages, because you meet this new person. It's like, oh, this person's incredible. It's kind of really great. And it can get really kind of exciting. And it's easy to lose sight that this person, just like you, has their own needs and they have their own things kind of going on. And I think as much as you can kind of balance that excitement with like, okay, this is another person that is not always going to be what I want them to be, and see them for who they actually are, it kind of really helps, because it's a little bit more of a genuine connection. It's really easy to kind of take off like, oh, this is really wonderful. I'm in this kind of romantic fantasy land where everything's perfect and I always feel great, because eventually that's going to go away. It's just, even from a biological level, we learned in our field when we were training and everything, you can't sustain that forever. And that can be a real big crash to kind of experience if you're not prepared for it. And I think that's something we learn as we kind of get older, we develop and everything. When we're younger, we're a little bit more idealistic because we haven't lived enough life yet to really know what's coming. But then when you've been through a few relationships, you've had a few experiences, you kind of start to recognize like, okay, yeah, this feels good, but it's not the end all be all. There's something deeper that has to be accessed to make this relationship have continuity.
Tim, would you agree that that's the honeymoon phase? The
Yeah.
honeymoon in 6, and then at the end of 6, you start to see the person with different eyes.
Yeah.
You let your hair down after a few months because you get comfortable. You get comfortable, and when you're comfortable, all those little special things that you're watching all the time start to just not slip away, but you fall back into your really natural personality. And that's why you need to be with somebody, whether a friend, I think, a business partner. I mean, Ted and I are in business together, but I've had business partners in the past. It was great at the beginning, like you said, and honeymoon. We loved each other. We had great chemistry. The business was growing. Well, then his life direction went off differently than mine, and we couldn't agree on anything. So I think all relationships, in order to see if they're sustainable, they need time, and that's just a natural thing. I think. I don't know. Julianne and Tim might have a better insight into that.
I actually agree with you 100%. I think in the beginning, when we find someone we're attracted to, right? That's what most people base their relationship on. In the initial meeting, it's like, is there a chemistry? And that's great, but that's not going to sustain a relationship long haul. That's why I look to encourage people to find someone who shares your same values, your same goals, your same relationship vision, and you can work towards that together. It's very easy to idealize someone, especially in the early stages, but we have to remember that they're human, and we also have to remember, and I'm just really talking from a dating perspective, that they're a stranger when you meet them. So many people are like, I work with hundreds of women, and a lot of times it's like, I found the one. I'm like, no, you haven't, because he's a stranger. You just met him, and I have to kind of reel them in so that they can really reset and get to know the person and find out who they are, and do they connect. And the one thing I want to say, especially because I know Eileen, she and Ted, I marvel at their friendship. They laugh together. I was going to say why I think he was, and I use the term familiar with my husband, when I sat across from him, and much like Eileen, I met him in high school. We went our separate ways and then re-met. I was like, oh, I recognize you. You're familiar. And it was effortless. We have our moments. We have 3 children. We have outside forces. We have difficult situations at times. But I'll share, we have 2 children. We have 3 children. 2 have a chronic illness. So we have to deal with that. But he's my best friend. And we really try and work together through that communication. But getting back to where I started, take it slowly and get to know someone, and try not to over romanticize who they are.
So how, in your experiences, or your areas of expertise in the case of Julianne and Tim, is it asking? I mean, is it that simple? Is it asking someone? And again, this refers to all relationships. So is it asking a potential mate? Is it asking your friend? Is it asking your boss? Is it asking, my mom and dad? Is it asking, what do you need? I mean, I don't mean to simplify, but is it that simple?
Well, I think it's based on the relationship. You're obviously, if you're working, you have a boss situation, you're not necessarily going to be, walking right in, and, you have to kind of, develop that relationship. But when you have an intimate, romantic, loving relationship, you should be at a point, be able to ask from your partner, have that communication, and develop that further as the time goes by and the relationship grows. Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I see that to an extent. And I also know that some people I work with, that it's hard for them to communicate about needs. It's hard for some people to know what it is they need or to put it into words. Could be a variety of reasons why that happens. Oftentimes, people I work with, maybe they grew up in a family where that wasn't something that they were allowed to do because it could be a crisis, could be that they had trauma, they had other stuff going on where they weren't permitted to express their needs. So they become adults and they carry that with them into these relationships. And this person's like, "Hey, what do you need from me? What do you? Oh, I don't know. I don't know." Like, they kind of freeze and they kind of panic a little bit about it. And you have to kind of help them develop a language. Sometimes I'll talk about developing it through empathy. Being able to find an emotion, connect that to a need. Some people just kind of need to try a few different things out. Like, what are some things that maybe sound good to you? Try seeing if this helps to, meet like a need for connection, or a need to be understood, or whatever the need might be, and see which ones fit and which ones don't fit. It can be kind of like a trial and error experience.
Can I insert a little something here? I think I heard something from my mentor, one of my mentors. I think it stuck with me. I asked him why he had never been married. I don't know if you remember Joe Cassini, but he was a legend in Hollywood. And I asked him, "Joe, why didn't you ever get married?" And he said, "I never met anyone that loved me as much as I love me." Mm. And I think part of the problem is that too many people start out by not learning to love themselves first. And you hear, "This person completes me." Like, I don't think so. I don't believe that. I think two people can meld, but I don't think, if you're not complete, how can you be in a relationship? Mm-hmm. And I think, let's put it this way: as a matchmaker, we had 50,000 clients over 20 some years. I can't tell you how many we put together. And what we did was not to push them onto each other, but rather what we called facilitate the relationship. We took away all the try to connect you and let them just do something that they could just be themselves, learning to dance. And through that, so many of them formed good friendships that some of them were hookups, but a lot of them ended up being, shut up, Tim. A lot of them turned out being very deep, long-standing relationships and marriages. So I think that was the thing. When we facilitate a relationship, it's, I got to back up whoever said, when you try not to find somebody, you find them. And that's it. Because when I hear somebody say, "the one, this is the one," I think you're missing the second half of the sentence. The one that I can stand to be with for the next 2 weeks before I find out something. So, not to put down the, the real relationship, but I think there's more than the chemistry. I think you've got to have the ability to give and take. And so many people, it's like I need. And that's why the 5 love languages fills that need, because we're a holy mess with a bunch of bullet holes in us, and we want people to patch us instead of say, "God, I love myself." Now, I can be with you as long as I'm not doing things that are negative to me. If I'm having to put up with negative for myself, why am I in this relationship? It's a harsher thing, but I think it's the opposite of pretending that, well, I can put up with this person, because 10 years down the road, that little tap on the back, you find out was a baseball bat. You didn't notice it the first 2 weeks, but after 10 years, that's a baseball bat. So, I think too many people, and they stay in the relationship too long because they think they're going to work. They think they're going to change the person. The person changes because they want to, not because you changed them.
If you go into a relationship thinking you're going to change somebody, I think Julianne would agree, and probably Tim, you're dead in the water right off the bat. People are who they are. In my experience as just a regular person who's been through a lot of life, people generally, you can change things you do or how you are, but you don't change your inherent personality. For instance, if you're basically an introverted type of person, you're not going to get up on a stage and start singing at a karaoke. It's just not who you are. That's true for a friend also, by the way. You have to accept people, again, in any relationship, for who they are and for their qualities and if you go into it thinking, well, I'll be able to fix that or change it, I think it's pretty deadly.
I'm curious. I used the word early on, unconditional, and it had to have been an author that I read where the word was used throughout the book, and I can't remember who it was, but it definitely struck a chord with me, and I gave it additional thought, and I thought, what exactly does that mean? And it's what someone said earlier. It's through the good and the bad. I mean, it's great to have someone there when everything's going well, but what happens, as we get older? I mean, I find I used the word deal breakers lightheartedly earlier. However, as I'm getting older, a friend of mine shared with me, and I don't think he used the word deal breakers, but I really need to know what it is that I'm seeking and wanting. So I'm curious, we talked about need, compromise. I use the word unconditional. How does all that come together? Because unconditional for me is that I may not always be in a good mood, but as a friend and I'm going to say as a friend, as a mate, yeah, I need you to hang in there with me. And I need you to understand that sometimes I'm not in a good mood. It has nothing to do with you. But I may not always be in a great mood. And so unconditional means that you're going to understand that there are other things happening in my life that, that I'm doing my best to handle as graciously as I can. Interesting, and you mentioned earlier on that your first relationship, you were married to really the dance and what you loved. Made me think of compromises. Where do you? And I'm throwing a lot out at our guests, because first we have the unconditional, but the compromise. You mentioned karaoke, Eileen. So if there are things that you love to do, like I love to dance, I love the arts, I love theater, should I be expecting that mate or that friend to want to engage in those activities as well? Or when it comes to relationships, is that a need that person knows, Mabel enjoys these things? So I'm curious, from a friend and relationship aspect, are those things that we should be doing for our loved ones?
I think it's both sides. I mean, you have to have similar values and certainly you should have some things you enjoy together. But when you're with somebody in a long-term relationship, I have women friends that go off for long women weekends. And that's their thing. And the men go off golfing for a golf weekend. The women don't golf, the men golf. So Julianne, jump in, or Tim.
Yeah, I don't think
You have to be filling every need.
Yeah.
exactly. Absolutely, you do not, and I don't think that similar interests is not something I really worry about when I'm matchmaking, or I'm coaching someone who's searching for a partner. It's like that's kind of like the last on my list. It's more along the lines of what we've already covered. Everything that we've talked about is really more paramount than whether or not you and your partner both like skiing, or you and your partner both like the beach. Would it be ideal and very nice? Absolutely. But I think compromise, as Eileen said, and really finding someone who gets you, who supports you through the difficult time and shows up, that's kind of more important than, if you're both skiing. I was listening to Ennio, and when he was talking about his first wife, what my takeaway is his passion is dance. While his ex-wife may have enjoyed dance and she was great at it, it sounds to me like it just wasn't as much a passion for her as it was for him. And, it's just my takeaway of what I heard, so she enjoyed it. She loved it. She wanted to do it. But when push came to shove, it wasn't her passion. It didn't fill her soul the way it does his.
So I'm curious, even when it comes to friendships, because I've found as I've gotten older that my friendships aren't quite what they used to be. And it's because of the path that they've taken. So a lot of my friends, are married. Some of them are on their second marriage, have children, and I embrace that because that's who they are now. And so I embrace them having their, I want to be now part of their extended family. But it doesn't always work out. I find that those friends won't reach out to me as much. My interests tend to be very different than my friends. I love everything that pertains to broadcasting. I love music, theater, being on stage. most of my friends have selected professions where they're in an office, where they've been with a company for 10 years. Yeah, there have been a lot of changes, I'd say, over the last 10 years or so. And some of my friendships have passed the test of time, and others have slowly dissipated, which saddens me. But I feel like it's well. I There's nothing that I can do. Tim, I saw you kind of nodding. So where does having those interests? So I mean, I think the values have remained the same, but as interests change in all types of relationships, whether it's with our family, whether it's with our friends, relationships, how do you, I'm curious, when you talk to clients or even in your own life, how do you address that part, or what have you encountered?
What I usually kind of tell people is to recognize that it's kind of a normal part of adulthood that, at some point you have to learn about how to have intimacy, how to have friendships. You figure out which friends you want to keep, which ones you don't want to keep. Like you said, we all make these decisions about whether it's a career thing, starting a family, pursuing some passion that you have. And you naturally aren't going to have the same amount of time as you get further into adulthood to invest in so many relationships. Your relationships get more intimate and they get fewer in number, because your priorities start to shift and change. And it's okay. I mean, it's painful to have to let some friendships go, but it's just kind of the natural course of life that everyone's not going to be going in the same direction. The world needs us all to be different and to do different things in order for us to function. But that means that some friendships are going to wither, unfortunately.
The harsh reality. Juliet, I saw you, looking pensively. Any thoughts on that particular
Yeah,
subject?
sure. I just think it's really based on the paths our lives take. Our life experiences, our responsibilities, our interactions with other people. I find that it's not always because we're not aligned with how we separate. It's more about what keeps us together in terms of our life experiences. I hope that makes sense. What drew us together in the beginning to our friends is a similar, or that familiarity, and now we're going, as we grow and we age. Tim is correct. It's a natural progression. Some people are just going to fade away in life, and some of our friends are going to remain with us through the end of time.
What are your thoughts when it comes to our families? I know here I people will often say, "Well, we're kind of stuck with those because we're related." And but I'd like to know kind of your thoughts, all of you, your thoughts. When it comes to our family relationships, whether it's siblings, parents, cousins, is it pretty much the same idea? I mean, would you agree that they're going to evolve?
Oh yeah, I think as we age and we go through different stages of life, we change as a person. I'm certainly not the same person I was at 30, and that's going to reflect on our interpersonal relationships, whether it be our friendships, our family, our spouses. Healthy relationships. We were talking earlier. We can grow as an individual, and very often I've seen. Our relationships heal an individual. While we shouldn't expect our partner to heal us, a healthy relationship can heal us. So I think that's something that we shouldn't discount, and we should also think about. The person we choose and we're hoping to be with for life should be that person who helps you, as you said, center us, heal us, help us grow as a person. I know that's exactly what happened with my husband. I mean, we met at 22, and over the course of our relationship, I mean, he's been the motivation behind the work I do. He's the one who said, you matched us well. You should go, you consider this. So the reason I'm doing this work is because of him. And I know I had, and Tim, you talked about, and we've talked about in our industry, I'm a social worker as well, how trauma really impacts the way we enter and show up in a relationship. And, very often that trauma can be healed through the right relationships. I very often, I've worked with a few women who said to me, my husband, the partner who I have doesn't have to be my best friend. And where I facilitated a conversation around that. And it's almost important for us to have our partners be our best friend, because we treat our friends differently than we would our spouse if we don't consider them a friend. I've seen it, women, how they, and I'm using women specifically because that's predominance who I work with in coaching. They'll say, they'll be quick to judge their partner, but if their friend did the same thing, a female friend, they'd excuse it away. They'd give them the pass. They'd be more understanding. So it's important that we treat our partners as our friends as well.
When it comes to family, I was going to say, when it comes to family, are there certain people that perhaps we should step away from as well?
Oh, absolutely, Tim. I know you and I have been taught this.
And I've done that with family therapy. That's been a really big thing. And because I used to work with children for a while. Like I worked with children and adolescents, and that was the one thing that some of the parents didn't like hearing me say, is that if I was doing therapy with a child, I wanted the whole family involved, because families are kind of their own system. They're like their living, breathing entity. And if I give the child all these tools and skills and everything, and they go back into that system, it's not going to do them any good. They're going to go back to doing what they were doing, because the system has decided this is the norm and this is the way it's going to operate. If the family's going to change, everyone in the family has to agree. We're going to go towards this new normal and work towards this.
And we need boundaries with those people who we love in our life. And it's okay to have them. And it's okay to set them, as well as expectation. It's very important to have expectation of your partner as well. So that's always a good thing. I think there's also something to be said for forgiveness. I think we've all been in relationships where we've had to forgive. And that's giving to a partner. It's more along the lines of, let me find out who you are as a person. That's what's most important. You really need to find out who that person is, and then see if all those things align with what you're looking for in a partner.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to end this segment on relationships. I know I've learned quite a bit about the importance of listening. I think we were all I think everyone would be in agreement that listening is essential. And certainly loving yourself. First and foremost, if the love doesn't come from within, trying to seek it out from outside sources, that's simply not going to be successful long term. And so what I hope to leave, our viewers, is I hope that this was that we engaged in dialogue that allows you to ponder on this subject matter a little more, to question the decisions that you make, that you love yourself from within. And I certainly want to thank all of our guests. Thank you for being honest, for being so raw in the way that you expressed yourselves, for sharing a little vulnerability. I am just truly grateful, and certainly for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Enjoyed it.
And I hope that all of our viewers will continue to watch upcoming segments. We're going to be discussing a little bit of everything. I want us to touch on our love for the arts. I want us to touch on, caregiving. As some of us are getting older, being a caregiver, talking about possibly this pandemic, because that's likely a subject matter that we're going to be discussing for quite some time. But for now, we tune out and we just say stay safe and healthy. And thank you so much for joining us. Have your voice heard and vote this November 3rd, 2020. Go to your polling locations or fill out your mail-in ballot. Together, let's spread the word.
Voting is our right as Americans.
Now more than ever, it's more than important for you to get out and vote for your country, your family, your children, and the future of America.
Tenemos que salir a votar. Tenemos que salir a dar nuestra opinión. Sal a votar.
Don't go by what you hear from your friends or family. Please do your research and vote. To all our 18-year-olds that just turned 18, our new voters, know that your voice matters and that this is your year where you can change the game. Vote.
Pamiętaj, żeby oddać swój głos 3 listopada. To ważne.
Honor those who went through the suffrage movement. Honor those who fought for the 15th Amendment. Honor yourself. Get out and vote.
让世界听到你的美妙的声音，投票去吧。
I became a naturalized citizen because I really wanted to vote. Vote is really important. Use it. Go out and vote. November 3rd.
Assicuratevi di andare a votare questo 3 di novembre.
It's your privilege, it's your right, it's your duty. Get out and vote.
People fought and died for the right to vote. Please don't waste it. Let your voice be heard.
好事嘅聽見你的神聖的一票投票去。
Your vote is important.
Let's get out the vote. Be sure to vote this November 3rd, 2020.